Welcome to lesson 2.3 in the lesson plans. Let me share my screen and we'll get rolling here. Lesson 2.3, string slicing. This is the way you get subparts of a larger string out. Okay, the objective is for students to be capable of slicing strings by indexing in order to extract only a certain amount of a string. And chapter 8 of the textbook Think Python deals with strings, and so you need to read. And they talk about string slicing right in here, 8.4, string slices. So a slice is simply a segment of a larger string, a smaller part of a larger string. Okay, so here's an example. They have s equals Monty Python, so the variable s equals the value of Monty Python, a string. And if you want to pull out the first 5 letters of that string, you would do s, the variable name, square bracket, right? I'm looking right here. Square bracket, 0:5, closing square bracket. You're asking, okay, why is there a 0? Well, Python is a 0-based indexing language, which means the first index is 0, which a lot of languages do that. Other languages don't. C++ and Java, C have 0 as the first index. They're called 0-based languages. Other languages like R and Julia that I'm familiar with use a 1-based language, meaning the first index is 1. So Python has a 0-based index. So if we look down here at banana figure 8.1 here in the textbook, we see that the index 0 is actually kind of right before the first thing, the first character, and the index 1 is on the right side. And so, like they say here, the operator square bracket n, which is the starting point, colon m, which is the end point, returns the part of the string from the nth, the starting point character, to the mth character, the last character, including the first, but excluding the last. So this is a little counterintuitive. It excludes the last, but it includes the first if you give 2 integers there, the start and end points. Okay, so it's a little confusing. Okay, so let's take a look here. And also I should point out that positive indexes will start from the left hand side of the string and go to the right. And if you give a negative number, a negative index, it'll start from the right and go left. Okay, so here's some examples. If we have orange, we have a string orange with between single quotes, right? And we have open square bracket to close square bracket. It's going to return the letter A, which is actually the third character. A little counterintuitive. Don't let it throw you off. Once again, it's a 0-based language. So 0 would have returned O, 1 would have returned R, and 2 returns A. Okay, the next one down, orange with a negative 1 between square brackets will return E, because it'll start from the right side of the string, the last character. Okay. And here, Roman numeral 3 here, says orange -2 colon. Okay, so this means your starting point is the second from last character. So on the right side of a string, Python is actually a 1-based language because -1 is the last character, -2 is the second from last character. Whereas on the left-hand side of a string, Python is a 0-based language because the first character on the left is actually an index of 0. The second has an index of 1. So that's why this right here, orange -2 colon, returns GE, because we're given it the starting point of -2, that is 2 from the end, from the right. And we give a colon, but we don't give an actual endpoint, which tells Python just to go all the way to the end of the string. Start at -2, that is second from last character, and go all the way to the end. So if we don't specify an endpoint, it'll just go to the end. All right, so here, next one down, we can use, I'll show that in a second. Here's another example. Orange with a 2 colon between square brackets will return from the third character to the end. Like I just mentioned a second ago, if we don't give an endpoint, it'll just go all the way to the end of the string. So it'll start at the third character, which is A, which has an index of 2, which we specify there on the left side of the colon. We don't specify an endpoint on the right side. It's empty there. It'll go all the way to the end of the string. So we'll get A-N-G-E. That's what we get there. Okay, so here we don't specify a beginning, next one down here. We don't specify a beginning point, but we do specify an end point. So it's going to start at the beginning of the string because we didn't specify any other starting point. So it's just going to default to the beginning of the string. So we'll get O, R, and it will stop at 2, but not include the character of index 2, that is A. So we only get OR. Once again, just jumping back to the chapter, it says, including the first starting point, but excluding the last. A little confusing. So if you give, if you have, for example, here we have a starting point of just at the beginning, just defaults to the beginning. We have an end point. It's going to go up to that point, but not include that index. So it's going to give us OR. Okay, you can also specify a third parameter, which is the step size. The default is 1 character, just every character. But you can specify something other than that. So this right here, banana, between single quotes, open square bracket, no starting point, colon, no end point, colon, but we do have a step size. And the step size is 2. So it's going to start at the beginning of the string. It's going to go to the end of the string, but it's going to go in steps of 2. So we're going to get B, and then N, and then N. So we would get those 3 letters out of this if we did that string slice like that. Okay. And then here, orange. So on the left side of this column, we don't have anything. So that means start at the beginning of the string. On the right side of the column, we have -2, which means stop at the second from last character. And so we get O-R-A-N out of orange there. So we're not going to get -2. Once again, we're not going to get that ending point, and that's why we don't get the G there. Okay, here on university, if we say, this is similar to what we just saw with banana, right? It's every other letter. We would get the first character, the third, the fifth, etc., 7th, 9th. Okay, so we get those letters, U-I-E-S-T. And this is interesting. This is a way, kind of a shorthand for reversing a string right here. If we specify a string or a variable that holds a string, square bracket, nothing specified as the start point, nothing specified as the end point, but a step size of -1. It's going to go backwards. Every character will be included, but it'll go backwards. So if we say apple, colon, colon, -1 within square brackets, we would get a backward version of apple, E-L-P-P-A. Okay, so that's a shorthand for reversing strings. And that'll be important when we look at palindromes in a second. Okay, so that's a quick rundown of string slicing. That's presented in chapter 8 of the book. Let's look at some practice here. So this first one says, write a program that asks the user for a word of at least 6 letters in length, then prints back to the user on one line the first 3 letters, and then on a second line prints from the 4th letter to the end of the word. Okay, so pause the video, take a few minutes to try and get a program that does this. Using string slices, what we just saw. Once again, looking at chapter 8 of the textbook, which I linked to from the lesson plan, can be useful, especially section 8.4. Okay, so ready, set, pause. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at this program. I'm going to write a program that asks the user for a word of at least 6 letters in length, then prints back to the user on one line the first 3 letters, and on a second line the 4th to the end letters. So let's jump over to PyCharm. Let me grab a little solution from my solution file that's on the CMS already. Okay, so here line 2 is asking for a word from the user of at least 6 letters in length. And then line 3 here says, okay, I put into this variable called WD, word, for short for word. And then I'm getting, let me make this a little bigger for us. Then I'm not specifying a start point. So that means it'll start on the left-hand side of the string. And I have a colon, but then I am specifying an endpoint. And this is going to print out up to, but not including the letter of the third index, which is actually the fourth letter. And then this says start from the end. If there are exactly 6 letters, start from the end, 3 letters from the end, and go to the end, because I don't specify an endpoint. So let me see if this works. Let me use keyboard shortcuts to run this little script here. Let me give it something with exactly 6 letters for this first pass. Let's see, I guess banana has 6 letters, right? So there we go. We got ban on the first line and then ANA on the second line. Now there's another way to do this. Let me just real quick, if I were to say word, start from the third index and go to the end, this should give me the same result. Let me just double check that's the case. Let me just put banana in there again. Yeah, it has the same result. The thing is if, so right there, the ANA is what we get from line 4 and line 5 of this source file. The thing is, if you have a word that's longer than 6, let me just run it again and give you a word that's longer than 6. University. It's going to do something different. So this is only going to give us, line 4 here is only going to give us the last 3 letters of the word. Whereas line 5 will start at the 4th letter, which has an index of 3, and go to the end. Right? So those are slightly different. Not slightly, those are different things. Although with a 6-letter word, a word that has exactly 6 letters, lines 4 and 5 will give you the same result, like we saw with banana. Okay, so if you'd like to pause the video and take a look at that, my file here, go ahead and pause the video. And we'll move on. The next one says, modify the program to print out every other letter. Every other letter. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try and modify your program to make it print out every other letter. Ready, set, pause. All right, let's take a look at one way to do that. Let me jump over here. This is pretty straightforward. You get on line 2, you get the input from the user, right? On line 3, we just print out every other letter by saying, I'm not going to give you a starting point. I'm not specifying anything to the left of the first colon. So that means to start from the beginning on the left-hand side of the string. I'm not giving you an endpoint between the 2 colons, so go all the way to the end, but I am giving you a step size, and 2 means every other. So let me run this, keyboard shortcut, enter. Let me just try university again. Yeah, there it is. Every other letter, starting with the first, going to the third, going to the 5th, going to the 7th, etc. Okay, if you'd like to pause the video and make it work on your end, go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Modify the program to print out the word spelled backwards. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can make that modification to your program. Ready, set, pause. All right, let's take a look at how you can go about that. And it's pretty straightforward here. That step size, we're just going to change that to, let me go ahead and paste this whole thing. Step size is -1. So once again, there's no starting point to the left of the first colon. So that means start from the beginning on the left of the string. I don't give you an endpoint between the 2 colons, so go all the way to the end, all the way to the right of the string. But I do specify a step size of -1, so actually go backwards. Let me just run that for fun. And let's try Utah. Yep, there it is, A-H-A-T-U. You can see it didn't do anything with the capitalization. Okay, All right, if you like this, pause the video, make that work on your end. Do so now. All right, so that is a quick rundown of some string slicing and reversing strings and whatnot, stepping every other letter. Okay, so that's, once again, that's on lesson 2.3 of my lesson plans. Now there are quite a few useful string methods that are accessed with dot notation. So what that means is that if we have a string here, we can put a dot right after it, or if we have a variable with the string in it, we can put a dot right after the variable name. And then we can do what's called a method, which is like a function. It does something to the string. So for example, apple.upper, open close parentheses, returns an uppercase version of the string, apple. And apple title, dot title, returns an uppercase A on apple. It's title case, meaning the first letter of every word is uppercase. Every string, that is. It does it on strings, not just words, on a string. What I mean by that is that you can have a string that's a whole sentence that has 20 words. It'll just do the first one because it's looking at strings, not individual words in that string. Anyway, these are pretty transparent. Lower, that'll return a lowercase version of the word. Is lower, if you have a string dot is lower, open close parentheses, if all the letters are lower, it'll return true. Like in this case, banana, all of those letters are lowercase, so it returns true. If I had one of the letters uppercase, like for example, the beginning B or any other letter that was uppercase, it would return false because not all letters are lowercase. Same idea with is upper. All of them have to be uppercase for it to return true. So in this case, that's false because there's at least one non-uppercase. But down here with all letters uppercase, that would return true. This right here, string dot find, and then within the parentheses, you put in a string, and it tells you where in the larger string the smaller string occurs. So this is the haystack, Mexico, and then X is the needle. I'm trying to find the needle in the haystack. And it tells you where. It tells you the index. So returns true, which means it's the second index, which in Python and other languages is the third character. Okay. And then this next string method, replace, pretty transparent, right? You have a string, dot replace, open parentheses, and you want to find that string and replace it with this string. So I want to find A's, replace it with X's. So if I gave it banana, dot replace A, comma X, it would return BX, NX, NX. And then this one, dot strip, is useful. It strips off flanking white space. So on either side of a string, not just a word, but the whole string, right? It'll take off white space, whether that's spaces, tabs, or new line breaks. That's what the strip string method does. So if I gave it a string that has 3, I'll just show you. This is 1, 2, I guess 2 spaces on the left side, and then a word, and then 1 space on the right side, and said dot strip, open close parentheses, it would return just the word orange without those spaces on either side. And then there's a dot count method that tells you how many times a certain string occurs in the larger string. And if I did banana dot count A, that would return 3. There are 3 A's in there. These are some useful string methods that especially the lowercase and uppercase we'll use quite a bit in this course. The strip is also useful. They're all useful, but okay. So those are string methods. There are other ones I'm not presenting here. Okay, let's try some practice here though. This says, write a program that asks the user for a word and prints back whether the word is a palindrome. That is, spelled the same way forward and backward. For example, noon. Noon is a palindrome because if you reverse this word, it would be spelled the same way, right? N-O-O-N, etc. And like I mentioned here, a little hint, you'll need to force case to uppercase or lowercase to deal with capitalization. Like I mentioned in a previous video, computers regard lowercase letters and uppercase letters as different things, different letters. So for example, for the Python interpreter, Hannah with a capital H at the beginning, but a lowercase h at the end is not a palindrome for a computer, for Python included. But all uppercase Hannah or all uppercase or all lowercase Hannah are palindromes. Okay, so try this. See if you can make a program that identifies palindromes that are given by the user. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and try that. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at how I would approach this problem, this question. I'll just grab my little solution from the solution file, the CMS. I don't need to go over there. I need to go over to here. Okay, let's take a look at the logic here first. So line 2 would just get a word from the user. We've used the input function quite a bit now. Line 3 is one of those string methods I just presented. It makes a lowercase version of the word. Now you could make it uppercase. Either one is fine, but you just need to regularize the case. You make everything lowercase so you can compare the palindrome and see if it is a palindrome. Make everything uppercase. Whatever one you want to do is fine. Just do one of them. I'm choosing to do lowercase here. So I'm going to make a lowercase version of the word that is brought in from the user, and then save it back to the same variable name. Just save it right on top of itself. Okay. And then here on line 4, I create a reversed version of the word. I save it to a new variable name called WDREV equals a reversed version of that word. And then I say, if the word is equal to 2 equal signs, please note that, the reverse version of it, then tell the user that you gave me a palindrome, thanks. But if this evaluates to false, then say you gave me a boring word. Try again. Okay, so let's try this. Let's run this and see what happens. I will give it a palindrome on purpose. I'll just give it noon for the moment. And yeah, you gave me a palindrome. Thanks. Let me run it again. Keyboard shortcut, enter. And I will give it Hannah, purposely not dealing with capitalization, because I do deal with capitalization here on line 3, right? So this should also say that's a palindrome. Yep. Let me just be explicit about this. If I were to comment out this line, I'm going to put my cursor in line 3 and then do Control/ to comment out that line. If I reran the script and did Hannah again, capital H and then lowercase h, this says, oh, you gave me a boring word, because it didn't recognize it as a palindrome, because once again, computers see uppercase and lowercase letters as different things. That's because I on line 3, I commented it out, so it's not running. So let me uncomment it out, Control/, rerun it. And I don't know, what's another word? Well, I'll just do non-palindrome, whatever, David is non-palindrome. And one more. I am blanking. Bob is a palindrome. There we go. Yeah, palindrome. Okay, so if you'd like to pause the video and look at my code here, go ahead and do so now. Or you can look at the solution file. I just pulled this example from that solution file in the CMS. And go ahead and pause now if you like. Okay, so that is the end of lesson 2.3 on string slicing, on how to access subparts of a word, which is what you'll need for the first homework assignment. Okay, and we saw also some useful string methods here. All right, so that concludes lesson 2.3. See you next time.